Imagine this, a quiet medieval town. The year is 1284, and then, in a single, breathless moment, all the children are gone. No one saw where they went. No one heard a cry. They simply vanished. 130 children, led away by a strange figure in a long, colorful coat, playing a haunting tune on a pipe. Sounds like a fairy tale, doesn't it? Something you'd hear before bed to scare or soothe. But here's the truth. This isn't just a story. It's recorded in real historical documents. It haunted the town of Hamelin for centuries, and to this day, no one knows what really happened. Was it a mass abduction? A cruel act of revenge? Or something far more sinister? Today, we're diving deep into one of Europe's oldest and most chilling unsolved mysteries. The tale of a broken promise, a stranger with a hypnotic melody, and a town that would never be the same. So, what really happened to the children of Hamelin? Stick with me, because this story only gets stranger from here. Before the children disappeared, Hamelin had a different kind of nightmare. The town was being overrun. Not by soldiers, not by a disease, but by rats. Thousands of them. They chewed through food stores, ruined crops, and worse, they spread filth, fear, and disease. Every alley, every home, infested. People were desperate. They prayed, they begged. They even considered burning whole neighborhoods to get rid of the infestation. And then he showed up. A stranger, dressed in a long coat with stripes of red, yellow, and blue. He called himself a piper, and he claimed he could get rid of the rats. Naturally, people laughed. I mean, who gets rid of rats with music? But the town had nothing left to lose. The mayor offered him a deal. Rid us of the rats, and we'll pay you 1,000 gold coins. So the piper walked through the streets, calm, confident, playing a tune that sounded otherworldly. And then it happened. Rats, by the hundreds, started to pour out of every crack, every cellar, every barn. They followed the piper like he was their master. He led them down to the river Weser, and without hesitation, they dove in. The town was free, just like that. And you'd think they'd celebrate, right? Throw a parade, pay the man what he was promised. But this is where the story takes a turn. The mayor refused to pay. He claimed the piper used some kind of trick, said the rats were a hoax, and instead of 1,000 coins, he offered him a few silver pieces. The piper didn't argue. He didn't shout. He just nodded and said, "You'll regret this." So let's recap for a second. The piper does the impossible. He saves the town from a nightmare. And instead of being rewarded, he's cheated. Now, if you were him, what would you do? The piper didn't scream, didn't beg, didn't demand revenge. He just walked away, quietly. But not before saying something strange, chilling even. You'll pay for this, one way or another. Days passed, maybe a week, and then it happened. June 26th, 1284. The town of Hamelin was celebrating the feast of Saints John and Paul. The streets were full of music, laughter, food. The church bells rang. The grown-ups were all gathered for Mass. But while the parents prayed, no one noticed the stranger slip back into town. Only this time, he wasn't wearing that colorful coat. No, now he was dressed in green, like a hunter. And just like before, he pulled out his pipe. But the song he played this time wasn't for rats. The children heard it first. They stopped playing, stopped talking, and just began to walk. 130 of them, all following the music, smiling, entranced, gone. By the time the townspeople realized what was happening, it was too late. They searched the streets, the forests, the hills outside town. No sign, no sound, no footprints. Just silence, and one final sighting from the town's edge. The piper, leading the children into the hills, then vanishing into the mountain, as if the earth itself swallowed them whole. Only 3 children didn't make it. One was lame, he couldn't keep up. One was deaf, he never heard the music. And one was blind, he couldn't follow where the others went. And they're the reason we even have this story. A town full of devastated parents, a church full of unanswered prayers, and a silence that rang louder than any bell ever could. The children of Hamelin were never found, not a single one. And for the people left behind, life never truly returned to normal. Hamelin, late 13th century. Some say the town never heard music again, not joyful music, at least. In the year 1284, on the 26th of June, by a piper clothed in many colors, 130 children born in Hamelin were seduced. That's a real inscription, etched into stone centuries ago. The town literally recorded the event in its architecture. For generations, Hamelin marked time not from the birth of Christ, but from the day the children disappeared. Year 1, after the loss. No music or dancing was allowed here, ever again. There's even a street where music was banned. No drums, no flutes, out of respect, or maybe out of fear. Over time, the story changed. By the 1500s, artists and writers began adding a twist. They said the piper had rid the town of rats first, that he was cheated and came back for the children as revenge. And just like that, fact turned to folklore. Tragedy became legend. But even today, Hamelin's church records still mark that day, not as myth, but as history. So what really happened to those children? So, was it just a story? Or did something truly happen in Hamelin all those centuries ago? Historians have been asking that question for over 700 years. One theory says the piper wasn't magical at all. He was real, but not what we thought. Some believe he was a recruiter, a locator, a man paid to lead young people east to settle new lands. Back then, Eastern Europe was practically begging for settlers, and many German towns, like Hamelin, were losing people to these far-off promises of land, food, and freedom. Was the piper just a charismatic leader, guiding Hamelin's youth to a new life? If so, why wouldn't the town talk about it plainly? Maybe they didn't want to admit their kids had left them. Or maybe something darker happened, something they couldn't bring themselves to write down. Another theory? Mass psychosis. In the 13th century, Europe saw outbreaks of a strange phenomenon. People, often children, would dance uncontrollably for hours, sometimes days. They'd collapse from exhaustion, or just disappear. Could the piper be a metaphor for hysteria, for disease, for something unspeakable? There's even a theory that the children were sent to fight in a holy war. Some believe they were part of the fabled Children's Crusade, led to fight in lands far from home. Most never made it back. And perhaps that shame was too much for Hamelin to bear. So what really happened? No one knows, not for sure. Maybe the Piper was real, or maybe he was the town's guilt, given a face. But one thing is clear. The mystery has never truly gone away. Centuries later, the town of Hamelin still remembers. Not just the tale, but the silence it left behind. The children never came back. The Piper was never seen again. And no one was ever held responsible. To this day, there's no definitive answer. Was it migration, madness, or myth made real? What makes the story so powerful isn't what we know, it's what we don't. The Piper became more than a man. He became a warning, a ghost, a whisper through history. And maybe that's why the story still lingers. Because part of us is still listening for the music. The Piper played, and the world never forgot. Thank you for watching. I really appreciate you taking the time to tune in. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't already, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any future content.